Hey everyone, Sari here, and welcome back to another week of Dark Season defense matches. Now that Celica's not in season anymore, it's time for Henriette to make her way back onto the defense team. While she doesn't pack quite as much firepower as Celica does, the combination of flash and fatal smoke effects, along with windsweep, really help her be a pain for any tank to try and deal with. Celsius and Felix, meanwhile, are still doing a very good job of encouraging people to try to tank this anyway. Katria's triangle attacks do make tanking this a dangerous thing to do though, since a brave attack enabled to Bramman or Felix or even Henriette is very difficult to tank through. I did end up giving Henriette defense tactic instead of blade session this week, mostly just to let Katria run 2 distant guards instead of 1. This really just helps Felix to tank his way through some of the more exceptional physical attackers. Overall, the defense really held up well this week. It wasn't quite a lossless week, but we only lost the 1 match, and outside of that we had a wall of successes. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out, and I don't think I'm going to be making too many more changes to the defense just yet. It seems to be doing pretty well. So let's get to the first match. This match was a fun way to start the week. They brought along a legendary Claude, who I think is actually a really great offense carry. Deflect Missile's a really neat idea for his seal too, since it lets him tank any brave weapons he might run into without losing his damage reduction. The null follow-up Fallen Morgan is a really great idea as well, since it really lets him take full advantage of his weapon's guaranteed follow-up and fallout prevention. It's a neat team overall, and I think this actually does really well against a lot of strategies. They take a turn just to move into position, and then they try to have Claude bait the map out by using his crafty effect and his damage reduction to attack into Felix safely before retreating. They do try to have him bait Felix from the side here, since he has 80% damage reduction for 2 hits here and should be able to survive. But the rallies come through and the dances, and, well, Henriette gets to warp forward and take air out. And then Bramman gets to take down Morgan. And Felix moves in. And even with 2 80% reduced hits, he can still finish off Claude. And that's enough for them to surrender and move on. This was one that was fun to see just after the last one, and they brought along a maxed out Brave Claude as their primary unit. He's really impressive at this level, and I think while he might have some problems against Bramans with impact and some other notable threats in AR, I think he can still do a lot of work with tanking his way through enemy maps, just thanks to being able to heal for half his health every time he uses a special. And they're backing him up with quite a bit of support with the 2 Harmonic Dorothea and the Peony. But I think they might have misjudged the initial threat range of the team, and started this fight before they meant to. Since the Order's buff doesn't actually get applied until the first turn, the threat range is a little bit longer than what it looks like at the start of the map. And, well, Bremond gets rallied forward and takes Claude out before he can counter. Felix jumps forward and attacks Dogger, but he can't quite finish her off. And the rest of the team can't get in range. They have Tatiana move over and take down Edelgard here, but I think it's just a revenge knockout before they surrender and move on. This one was interesting to see just because of, well, the unsniped bolt tower for the most part. They also brought along a Halloween Robin as an honestly a really excellent frontline tank and backed her up with a Guinevere. The close defense seal is a little questionable on Gwyn though. I'm not really sure why they gave it to her. It's better than nothing, I guess, but it's definitely not a seal that's ideal for her. This is a pretty decent team overall. They've got a couple of different tanking options between Freya and Robin, and Guinevere's an excellent mage tank who can also do a pretty good job of hitting and running with the right support. They take a couple of turns setting up here while they wait for their bolt tower to go off. And once it does, they can get things started. The 45 damage is enough for Guinevere to finish Felix off. And then they dance and retreat. Unfortunately, even though Bremond actually wastes an action rallying here, he still ends up getting to jump forward and attack Guinevere. Guinevere comes very close to actually just one-shotting him outright, but it's not quite close enough. And the quad is enough for him to bring Gwyn down. They decide to keep going here. Dogger doesn't have too many problems cleaning things up after the bolt tower hit. Then she can take down Bremond as well. From here they move Robin into position to start tanking. And I mean, without Katri involved, I think they were pretty comfortable thinking that Robin would be able to handle things on this side, while Dogger handled things on the other. Unfortunately, Rajat moves in first, and that's a bit of a problem since it means that neither of their frontliners can counterattack anymore. And while Note can't quite finish Dogger off, she can move over and take down Robin. Which lets Celcius move over and swap her back to safety. They decide to keep going here even with that loss, and end up having Freya tank Celcius, which doesn't end as well as they may have liked. Even with Pulse Smoke disabling Black Luna, she can't actually take a second hit from him. And once Freya's down, they decide to surrender the match and move on. This match was also a lot of fun to see, mostly just for the chance to see a nearly maxed out bonus week Palla. She's honestly super impressive at this level of investment and Combined with this Lyn and the two dancers, I think this is a very, very solid hit-and-run approach team. The combination of a brave adaptive damage weapon and Kento, plus Gale Force on top, mean that Palla can hit and run extremely easily, especially with a hit and run skill in her B slot. And I think they probably could have won this match if they hadn't misjudged the threat range based on the turn 1 display. Once the Order's buff is active, everyone's in range to attack and Bramman gets danced forward. Rajat picks up an easy knockout on Lyn. Bramman can finish off Palla. And then Felix can step in and take down Peony. And with those three out of the picture, that's enough for them to move on. This match was really fun to see, just because I think it's the first time I've seen the legendary Dimitri and legendary Byleth pair in action. And they brought along a maxed out legendary Dimitri to this. It's really impressive to see. I do think this combo is actually extremely powerful. A lot of the weakness of legendary Dimitri is that he can't use Atrocity at the same time as null follow-up. And with Byleth giving him access to null follow-up, he can suddenly run both and have access to damage reduction, null follow-up, slaying, Atrocity for its spectrum of smokes, and just the raw damage it provides. I'm looking forward to using this combo myself at some point. It should be a lot of fun. They take a couple of turns to move into position here. Sniping their bolt tower means that it's a little bit trickier for them to just pick things off cleanly. But Byleth can still manage it. Strong green mages are something Felix doesn't handle too well, which is unfortunate. They do end up risking a 50-50 on the heavy trap though, and that's a bit of a problem for Dimitri, since it means that Katria can just attack into him and bring him down. Unfortunately, the rallies actually backfire on us, and nobody else manages to get in range this turn. They decide to keep going. Byleth doesn't have any problems taking down Note. And then Air can actually bring down Bramman. From there, two dancers gives them a lot of options to work with for cleaning things up. And they dance Byleth forward to one-shot Rajat. And then dance in again to take down the dancer on our team. Sadly from here, the rallies mean that we're not really going to be able to get in range again. But they end up picking the wrong target with Katria here. Because without a special, it's very difficult for Byleth to actually bring Zalgius down. And trying to soften Zalgius up with Azura ends up backfiring a bit. And once Azura's down, it's enough for them to surrender and move on. This was fun to see too. It's been a little while since I've seen a full save triangle with Flayn, Gustav, and Henriette. And I think they're still an extremely powerful trio, if you can put them all together. Since the damage reduction from Flayn makes her an excellent corner unit for the two safe armors. And since they both get to specialize perfectly for ranged or melee tanking, it makes them very hard to break through. They spend a few turns here just getting set up and moving into position. Without a march seal or skill, they have to rely on ground orders to try and move the armors up into position, so it takes a little bit. Once they're ready, though, they pick up the second Aether pot and get ready to start things on the next turn. They move Flayn into the corner to help them bait things out. Unfortunately, while Henriette's very strong at tanking ranged units, she doesn't include a guard effect in her base kit. And since Brennan is quadding, he gets an iceberg. And that's a little too much for Henriette to tank. With Henriette out of the way, it's easy enough for Felix to step forward and bring down Flayn. And even though the rest of the team doesn't make it in range, that's enough for them to surrender the match and move on. This match was the one failure of the week, which is always a bit unfortunate to see. Especially when you lose lift for it. A lot of this comes down to the unsniped bolt tower, which gives them a very obvious and strong opening turn on turn 3. And when they can take advantage of it with a fallen Edelgard and a bonus weak Zeke, it's easy enough for them to crack things open from there. They also brought along 2 different plus 10 peonies, which is always an interesting thing to see, along with this plus 8 air. Altogether, I think this team is pretty heavily invested on making Edelgard work. Zeke's a solid enough backup for the bonus week, but Edelgard's the one who does most of the work here. And being able to give her up to 6 extra attack from these peonies from across the map does a lot for helping her to one-shot things with Gale Force. And once they've tested the trap and gotten the bolt tower damage, Zeke can finish Celcius off, which gives Edelgard a very easy opening to start cleaning up the major threats of the team. She starts with Katria, which disables triangle attack. It's very important. And interestingly went after Note here. I expected her to go after Felix, or Rajat after Note, but Bremond is a little spooky. And, well, with the team being distracted by Edelgard, it's not like anything else is going to catch up. Even with all of that, Rajat still does a pretty good job of whittling Edelgard down. She can't finish Edelgard off here, obviously, since she relies on her teammates to do that for the most part. And Felix doesn't quite have enough punch without the triangle attack to bring her down. At this point, it's very easy for them to start cleaning things up. Edelgard can finish off her shot, and then they pull back just to bait things out safely. They do still need the second Aether bot too, so buying themselves an extra turn is a good idea. And here they have Edelgard slowly take down Felix. Takes her all 3 attacks, but she does manage it in the end. Then they pick up the Aether pot. And since Zeke can't quite deal with Eldigan in one round, they just let Edelgard handle it. And then finish him off with Zeke. It's always nice to rebound from a failure with a success, and, well, beating a nearly maxed out for safe Brave Hector is always a bit of a good feeling. They are supporting him with the Brave Lucina, which is a bit odd, since he has Special Fighter already. I think that Crafty Fighter is actually a really great way to pair him with Brave Lucina, though. If you have it, it's a bit rarer. And the Loki support's a great touch too. The crafty effect's actually very, very strong these days, with all of the emphasis on ranged cavalry units. And I think that as long as they're not using Odd Recovery, she can do a lot of work. They take a few turns to get set up and move into position here. Since we sniped their bolt tower, it's not very easy for them to just try and pick something off at the start of the fight. I'm not sure they were entirely sure of the best way to approach this, and they end up using Rhea to try and bait things out. Unfortunately, even with her bonus weak stats, Rashot's effective damage and triangle attack give her a very easy knockout there. From there, the rallies come through, and Rashot gets danced, and can find a second easy knockout on Peony. Felix takes a shot at Hector here, but without Rashot supporting him, it's a lot harder to bring Hector down. They shove Hector forward to try and tank. I think they were hoping to take out a unit with this Aether, but Celcius is a little too bulky for that. And Catria can move in and take Hector down. With Hector out of the way, it's very easy for Felix to pick up Lucina. Rashot, on the other hand, gets baited into Loki, and while she doesn't lose this fight, she can't take Loki out either. And nobody else can get in range for the turn. But that's enough for them to surrender and move on. This match was a lot of fun to see, just because I think this is the first time I've seen a nearly maxed out Kronya with Fatal Smoke that isn't mine in action in either raids. I think she's still really solid, especially if you back her up with a Duo Hector and a Bolt Tower, which provides her with a lot of damage before she even starts attacking to work with. Unfortunately for them, we do get to pick off their Bolt Tower, and we also have a Duo's Hindrance for Hector, which means that Kronya actually has a much harder time breaking through the initial front line of the team. They spend a few turns here just moving around and I think scouting out the combats, just to try and figure out what'll work. And they end up deciding just to let Freya bait things out. This next part actually really caught me off guard. Katria rallies and then moves into the perfect position to stop the map from activating, which is really awkward since she's now out of position for most of the triangle attacks. But she still does enable Felix, who can jump forward and pick off Hector. From there, Edelgard dances Celsius, and Katria rallies herself back into her starting position. Bramond gets to attack Kronya too, but without triangle attack she is just bulky enough to survive this. I don't know how often that bit with Katria is going to happen. If it happens more, I'll probably need to look into fixing it. But as is, that was enough for them to surrender and move on. This match was another fun way to see some maxed out units. They brought along a +10 Edelgard, who I think is still a very capable tank, even if there are a lot more options right now to help deal with her. And a nearly maxed out Versa to back her up. A Versa is actually a really great way, even now, to help soften up a defense team, especially with the rising numbers of visible buffs that defense teams are starting to use. She really does help shut down Note in particular. Unfortunately, like a few teams this week, I think they misjudged the threat range of the team and moved Palla a little too far forward, which means the map starts and Palla's a very vulnerable target. Bramond takes her down without any problems, and well, losing her is enough for them to concede the match and move on. This was a neat team to see at the end of the week. They brought along a fallen Edelgard, who can transform right away thanks to the combination of Milla and Freya, and a Zane with close counter advantage. The Zane's an interesting choice. I don't think he's the most ideal close counter advantage unit, since his weapon really just lets him get some stats from his allies, and there are better close counter advantage units available out there. Even something as simple as Nino works really well. They decide to get things started immediately, moving Edelgard forward to tank things. But Edelgard has a bit of a problem when it comes to tanking Felix with triangle attack active. She can get a bonfire in on him, but he can survive that before finishing her off with a bonfire of his own. From there, Bramond can warp forward and take down Freya. And while the rest of the team can't get in range, that cripples a lot of their options. They have Dagger take down Note, which feels appropriate. And then they dance Milla forward to finish off Felix, From here, though, they're in a bit of a tight spot. And both Dogger and Milla are very exposed for this turn. Brenmund takes Milla down without any problems. Before Shot moves in and takes down Dogger. And then she gets another attack in to bring down Peony. And with Zane left all on his own, that's enough for them to surrender the match and move on. Overall, it was a pretty solid week. Again, it's good to see, even with that one awkward match that had Katria rally and then stop the map from starting. I don't think that's going to happen too often. If it does, I'll need to adjust things to make sure it doesn't anymore, but for now at least, I don't think it's something that people are trying to actually exploit. I do have a Discord, if you'd like to hang out and chat, there's a link in the description, and there's also a Patreon page if you'd like to help support the channel. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video, good luck with your own matches, and I'll see you next time.